Thanks everyone for coming and thanks for hanging around. Both data exclusivity and patents provide market exclusivity through monopoly periods. Because data exclusivity and patents can protect the same pharmaceutical beginning at different times in the pharmaceutical life cycle and having different durations, these terms may not coincide and each can extend the effective market exclusivity period of the other. For example, when data exclusivity persists beyond the period during which the originators can charge when data exclusivity persists beyond patent expiry for a pharmaceutical, subsequent entrant access to the market is restricted and the period during which originators can charge high prices is extended. I talk about subsequent entrants. You've all heard generics, I dare say. Biosimilars are another form of subsequent entrant. I'm going to lump them together today because while they're different, there's a lot of differences between them. For this talk, it's the same sort of principles apply. I'd like to think about when we get to the end to a mechanism whereby we can make these two monopoly periods expire together so that we don't have this idea of one extending beyond the other and try to make that a practical solution. So today I'm just going to talk about data exclusivity, patents, and then how to try and harmonise those two expiries if we can. As Hayley said, my name's Teddy Henriksen. I'm a legal academic at the University of Queensland, but I've also been a pharmacist for about 35 years. I'm really interested in IP and I'm really interested in access to medicines. Data exclusivity has really piqued my interest over the last 6 to 12 months or so, and I've managed to rope my colleague, my wife, Dr. Simone Henriksen there, into talking about this a bit as well. But it's such a really interesting topic because it goes to what generics and biosimilars are, these subsequent entrants. So what is data exclusivity? During the data exclusivity period, molecules seeking marketing approval are unable to rely on originator trial data. So what happens with the generic is after the patent period has expired, a generic manufacturer will come along and say, I'm going to market something that's exactly the same as that. But they don't have to provide all the clinical and the preclinical data that the originator has had to do. They can actually rely on the data from the originator. Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? Something that they haven't done, they get credit for. The data exclusivity period stops them from doing that for a period of time. As you can imagine, not having to do those trials makes the development process in terms of cost and time much cheaper for a generic medicine. That's why they are cheaper than the originators. Once they enter the market, competition in the market, prices come down. Plenty of data to show that once you have 3 or more generics of the same molecule in the market, prices come down markedly. Generics up to 80% decrease in prices. Biosimilars less, but they're a lot more expensive to produce, but nevertheless the same principles apply. What happens with pharmaceuticals though, new pharmaceuticals, is they'll often be eligible for patents as well. So how do we work out, or how do we deal with these two different regimes and how they work together? I think that's gone up one. Went back to front, sorry about that, we'll go in there first. Some say that data exclusivity is mandated in TRIPS Section 7. There's not universal agreement on that, but let's just say it does. They may be useful if pharmaceutical patents are weak in protecting that pharmaceutical, but then the question then applies is, if the patent's weak, should we be protecting it at all? Don't know. There is the Hatch-Waxman Act of the United States, which brought this idea of an abbreviated new drug application into being in about 1984, and some say that that's where data exclusivity sprang from, allowed us to have these abbreviated new drug applications where they didn't have to supply a complete dossier of preclinical and clinical trials. Let's go back and just presume for a moment that data exclusivity is mandated by the TRIPS agreement. Unfortunately, the TRIPS agreement doesn't say how long it has to be. Different to patents. So consequently, in different jurisdictions, we've got different durations of data exclusivity. And indeed, in some jurisdictions, biosimilars are treated differently to, or biologics are treated differently to small molecule pharmaceuticals. There's also a push by some of the more developed countries, notably the EU and the US, in their free trade agreements to extend data exclusivity provisions, make them longer. Interestingly, they are also net exporters of pharmaceuticals. So it comes back to maybe what we've been talking about all day, about these industry groups being able to influence IP or using IP to influence what happens, particularly if they can extend data exclusivity beyond the patent period. The thing with data exclusivity, though, is that while the data exclusivity period is in place, there's nothing to stop the generic manufacturer, well, there is a couple of things, but we'll talk about those in a minute, from actually repeating those preclinical and clinical trials. One is the cost. That's what they don't want to do. And obviously there's some moral and ethical considerations, big ones, in repeating trials of an already approved medicine that is safe and effective. Think about someone who's undergoing treatment for cancer and they're given the placebo as part of a trial for a drug that's already been approved. Don't know how that's conscionable. Patents, as most of us know, are mandated in TRIPS Section 5. When I talk about patents today, or pharmaceutical patents, I'm only talking about product patents. Most pharmaceuticals will have a number of patents covering method of manufacture, method of treatment, as well as the molecule itself. So for today, I'm only talking about the pharmaceutical molecule, or the claims within a patent that refer to the molecule itself. They give an exclusivity of 20 years. In some cases, you get an extension. In Australia, we give an extension of up to 5 years under the Therapeutic Goods Therapeutic Goods Act. As far as barrier goes to competition, I said data exclusivity doesn't actually stop a generic manufacturer from repeating those trials, apart from those big considerations we had. A patent stops them in their tracks. No one else but the patent holder or a licensee can exploit that particular molecule for the period of the patent until it expires. So the difference, essentially, between data exclusivity and patents, when we talk about product patents, is that the product patent is an absolute barrier. While that's in place, no one else can exploit that molecule. Data exclusivity is a partial barrier. It's a substantial one, and I don't know that anyone would want to repeat those trials, as I said, but in theory, a partial barrier. So that's the difference between the two of those. The interaction between them, as I said, most pharmaceutical molecules will have, or new pharmaceutical molecules will not only have data exclusivity, but they'll also have a product patent. The difficulty is that not only do they have different durations, and I've said data exclusivity has no mandated duration, overall, in different countries it does, or different jurisdictions, but a patent does. Data exclusivity starts in Australia, and it's a fairly good example, from the moment that new molecule is entered into the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, the ARTG, and lasts for 5 years only. Does not cover, there's a couple of limitations on it, does not cover, for instance, when sertraline or Zoloft was first released, it was an antidepressant, worked well. Subsequent indications for anxiety and a couple of other things came later on and had to have extra trials done, extra clinical trials. They were not covered by data exclusivity. That 5-year period is 5 years full stop, once only. Patents start from when the patent is filed for, usually very early in the development process. It lasts for 20 years. depending on how long the pharmaceutical's in the development process, data exclusivity may extend past patents. Particularly, as I said, in these new free trade agreements, which there is some backlash against, where the EU and the US, for instance, the US has 8 years data exclusivity for biologics, 5 years for small molecules. Australia has 5 years full stop. The EU has 8 years plus 1, 11, up to 11 years. So they're longer. It's quite feasible then, if those things are in place, that they don't expire until after the patent does. Why then do we have something that extends the monopoly of a patent? Particularly, let me play devil's advocate for a minute, if a company's making a pharmaceutical, they take out a patent, they know they're going to have to do clinical trials to market it. That's part of the process. Part of the deal with a patent is it's supposed to give a reward for the money, the time, the effort in research and development. They know they have to do clinical trials. Part of the research and development. When the pharmaceutical companies sell data exclusivity, they'll also tell you data exclusivity is a reward for the clinical trials and the preclinical trials we've done. They don't talk about the reward they've already had. Is it a double dip? Don't know. Not really sure. So the potential remains that data exclusivity can extend the patent period. Is there a way to deal with that? Potentially. Instead of tying data exclusivity to the ARTG entry, or the entry to the ability to market, why don't we tie it to the product patent expiry? I don't know whether we can or not. I think we can, if we really wanted to. And if we did, then we're never going to get that extension. I think if we did that, it'll have a number of strengths. You'll align the two regimes with respect to expiry. It ensures that data exclusivity will never outlast the patent expiry and thereby adversely affect the access to medicines. Because as long as we're not got the generics in the market, the prices are not coming down. It allows data exclusivity to mirror changes in product patent expiry through litigation. So if a patent's litigated, there should be that link still between the data exclusivity expiry and the patent expiry. And data exclusivity still remains as an effective protection for pharmaceuticals that have weak patents. That might be a weakness, depending on how you look at it. There are a couple of weaknesses, of course, as with everything. We've got some TRIPS flexibilities and Article 30 exceptions, which talks about unreasonable conflict with normal exploitation. It may fall under that category. Hard to define. And also in the Patents Act Section 199A, acts for obtaining regulatory approval may be affected by both data exclusivity still being in force. But then what happens now? We've got these provisions which allow generic companies to not to get the jump, to do acts preparing for regulatory approval prior to patent expiry, as long as they don't market until patent expiry. So I think it's worthwhile considering. Being able to harmonise the two might be a good thing. That's all I had. Thanks very much.